The four sources I've used are Richard Weston's account of a visit to the United States and Canada. He was an Irishman who, after wanting for so many years, traveled to America, finally decides to do so. He talks about in detail the what he goes through traveling to get to the United States. He talks about the dream of becoming an American citizen, but also the dark side of it. How many people claim to have come to the United States and made a lot of money, improved their lot, as they say, and then went back to Europe. In his case, he didn't do that. He found it very hard. He didn't have the resources, nor did he know the people to make the right connections to start a business or to own a good piece of land. He goes on in detail talking about how he feels the Americans are deceitful in their business practices, and in the end, he runs out of money and he decides to go back home. So this source covers specifically about the nature, the family dynamic of a typical Irish family, and what they are like, and that's pretty much it. My other source, as you can see, I'm looking back and forth. The other source is Mr. Everett Hale Edward, Letters of Irish Immigration. Um, this was taken in 1852. It's just an accounting of a guy who went on a shipping boat to the United States, and he interviewed Irish immigrants on the way there. And he goes off to note different statistical facts about the Great Migration of the Irish people from Ireland, obviously, to the United States. One of the main concerns he goes to in detail are that many of the Irish people are sick, and they're a different type of immigrant that Americans aren't used to seeing. Another source is California Chinese Chatter, and this is a rather funny. It's an account of telegraph messages between different Chinese people in California, and it in detail it covers this one fellow named Jack, and how he goes from being in a lawsuit to killing somebody for over a pair of boots. And in this source, I point out that we identify this person as killing somebody for boots, which is to me the essence of misunderstanding. I don't think this guy killed somebody for boots. They're just that different. Again, that comparison to the Irish, where the Chinese were so different, as stated in lecture and in class and in the readings, that we couldn't see them as assimilating. And so there's a reason for that. Try to detail as to why restriction is felt the way they did. Um, another another source is the California Report on Fresno's immigration problem. Now, this is more close to where I used to live, is in Coalinga, California, and it goes in details about the different type of immigrants living in Fresno, California, which include the Armenians, Italians, Mexicans, and the German Russians. And it goes through the state of each each immigrant population, and how they live and where they live, and how they're viewed badly. It's an official account of the county of Fresno, the state of California, and the state of California. It's just eye opening how, again, going back to the other resource of Richard Weston, how this Irishman is saying that Americans are deceitful in their business practices. And in the California report, the official California report says that Armenians are deceitful in their practices. So again, it's just how people are viewed. It also goes on to state how the Russian Germans are so isolated and how they came about. There's a different type of people that the czars in Russia invited them to come to Russia, obviously, um, due to their expertise in farming, and how they lived isolated most of the time. So these people then moved from Russia to Fresno, because of their agricultural land, and they live the same life. They're an isolated life, which is what, again, restrictionists were trying to avoid: a large population of people who can identify or assimilate to life in the United States. Just imagine there's 40 million people, and a third of them, they can't identify to what the other population is seeing. That would cause great concern and eventual, strife and, political disagreements, the type that can break a young nation apart, which is what I think restrictionists were trying to fight against. The thesis for my paper is pretty much what I just said. The restrictionist view was to limit the type of immigrant that could come into the United States. And while my initial reaction, because I myself, my parents are Mexicans and I'm a first generation Mexican American, tended to view these people as simply just racist. But looking further, they're not simply just racist. It's just they're primitive in their thinking, and so they only wanted to let people in who they could identify with, who they thought could totally break away from their old views, old traditions, and alliances, and just strictly be an American. And the legacy that immigration has in America is a confused one. It's confusing to many people because we usually this topic brings up um, emotional strings to it, even today. And I could tell even back then how certain people were identified as mongrels, or dumb, or stupid, unable to assimilate, unable to live a civilized life. And that same argument is still used today. So it's a very conflicting one. But under under the surface, it's a more complicated problem, which I think needs to be dealt with. Just like the restriction is dealt with it back in the late 1800s and early 1900s, I think today the same needs to be done. Not totally restricting people from coming here, but a more comprehensive way of dealing with the issue should be made. And that's pretty much the thesis for my paper, and also what I think the legacy of immigration in the United States is.